Hi, this is Pastor Jonathan with St. Andrew United Methodist Church, and you're watching the Bible in 5 minutes. This week I want to shift gears a little bit and do a plug for our upcoming Bible study that will begin next Wednesday, September 4th. Our Bible study is in conjunction with the wonderful Wednesdays ministries of the church, and so at 5:30 we will be having a delicious meal in Friendship Hall, prepared by one of the groups of our church. And then at 6 p.m., our Bible study will begin in Friendship Hall. And so if you get to the church at 5:45 or 5:55, you can still grab a plate of food, enjoy a delicious meal, and then join us for Bible study. Just sit and relax, eat your food while we begin our Bible study. After a lot of prayer and deliberation, I chose to teach on the Gospel of Mark this semester. And in the next few minutes, I want to share with you why. Hopefully, whet your appetite a little bit so that you might join us as we study the Gospel of Mark. Mark's Gospel is the earliest of all 4 Gospels, and it's used as a primary source by Matthew and Luke. And so when we study the Gospel of Mark, we are studying something that is foundational to the life, understanding the life and ministry of Jesus in the New Testament. If we were going to study Matthew or Luke, we would need to study its relationship to the Gospel of Mark. So when we put Matthew and Mark next to each other, we find that there is a 55% verbatim rate. So at least 55% of the time, Matthew is following Mark word for word. The difference is the Gospel of Matthew is much longer. And so in the earliest centuries of Christianity, it raised the question of, do we really need the Gospel of Mark? Because everything we know about the Gospel of Mark is in the Gospel of Matthew, and we have more. Matthew has absorbed Mark and included more material. Well, thankfully, through the leadership of the Holy Spirit, the earliest Christians didn't dispose of the Gospel of Mark. They included it in the Christian canon in the New Testament, but it's been significantly neglected for most of Christianity until the last century or so. The biblical scholars began to dig into the Gospel of Mark and discovered that it actually has a lot of unique features. What we find to be the most unique about the Gospel of Mark is its rhetoric. Rhetoric is the art of persuasion. It is the way that material is arranged and organized to convey a specific message. So today I want to give you an example of the rhetoric in the Gospel of Mark. I hope that you will be intrigued and that you will join us as we study and we look at Mark through a socio-historical lens, as we study the literary style of Mark and understand the implications for our lives as disciples. So it's really rare for us to read the Gospel of Mark on Easter Sunday because there is no resurrection appearance of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. In fact, the last words spoken by Jesus in Mark's Gospel are from the cross. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? When we turn to the Gospel of Matthew, we find the Great Commission where Jesus sends his disciples out to make disciples of all nations. And in the Gospel of Luke, we have the account of Jesus kind of being incognito with 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus. And then they stop and they break bread together, and Jesus reveals his identity as the resurrected Christ. In the Gospel of John, we have multiple resurrection appearances. We have the appearance in the garden to Mary when she confuses him with a gardener, and then there's the appearance to the disciples, and then a week later when Jesus appears to Thomas, and then there's another resurrection appearance in the Gospel of Mark when the disciples have the miraculous catch of fish and Jesus prepares breakfast for them on the shore. But the Gospel of Mark doesn't have a resurrection appearance. In fact, the Gospel of Mark ends with these words. So they, the women who came to the tomb early that morning, went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. This is a cliffhanger. This is the way that the earliest account of Jesus' life ended. And it was so troubling to the earliest Christians that by a century of the Gospel of Mark being written, there was a longer ending that was added. And interestingly, the longer ending is one of the only places in all of the New Testament that talks about snake handling. But earliest Christians, they were troubled by this abrupt ending of Mark's gospel, and so they thought they would smooth it over by including a longer ending. Now, I'm not troubled by it at all, because I don't think that the Gospel of Mark is intended to be a cut and dried account of the life and ministry of Jesus. It is historical, it has historical value, but it's also shaped to communicate a specific message. And I believe that in order for Mark to communicate his message, he needed to end with a cliffhanger. He needed to end his story with suspense. And the only way that we can understand it and appreciate it is to study the Gospel of Mark as a whole. So I hope that you'll come and join us as we dig deep into the text and as we reflect on why the women fled in terror and amazement and fear on that first Easter morning. Until next time, take care and God bless.